What happens if you don't show up for jury duty? What does contempt of court entail? Where do I find a personal injury attorney in the state of Iowa? Welcome to the Biker Rebellion. I'm your host, Ginger, here with founding member of the Biker Lawyers, Pete Leahy. Once a month, we take a look through the comment section and see what questions our viewers have, then answer them. Now, a quick disclaimer, we're not handing you legal advice here. Everyone's situation is different, and that's why we recommend talking to a lawyer about whatever you may be going through. So, first of all, question number one, Pete, what is financial compensation?
Financial compensation in the context of a lawsuit is where you are getting basically repaid for what your losses were that were caused by some other driver's negligence.
Let's say I hit a car on my bicycle and I got hurt. Now what happens?
Well, first I'm going to say if you hit a car, I'm hoping that the car did something wrong before you hit it.
Okay.
So we're assuming that the other guy was at fault.
Okay.
So if somebody's at fault and causes you to get in a crash on your bicycle, it doesn't really matter what you're on, whether it's a bicycle, a motorcycle, a car, whatever. If somebody else causes a crash and you get hurt, then that somebody else is responsible for the losses that you suffer because of the crash, whether they be medical bills, loss of income, quality of life damages, whatever.
Now, if someone else is driving and crashes my vehicle, like let's say I lend it to a friend, am I liable for what they do?
You're not personally liable for what they did. Well, let me back up a little bit. I mean, you're not liable to the person who you lent your car to, but let's say that the person you lent your car to is at fault, causes somebody else damages, then in theory, yeah, you could be, because that person's what's known as a consent driver. You've given them permission to drive your car. So before you give somebody else permission to drive your car, you better make damn sure you've got good insurance. Gotcha. Because if you've got a policy that most people would consider inadequate, for example, the statewide mandatory minimum of $20,000, somebody gets in your car, crashes, they're at fault, and they cause $100,000 of damages, but you've only got a $20,000 policy, now you got something to worry about because your personal assets have just been exposed.
Okay, what happens if I'm hurt driving someone else's vehicle? Like they've consented for me to drive their vehicle and it's not my fault. I get in a crash, another car hits my car, right? And I'm hurt. What happens?
Your first claim is against the driver of the other car that was at fault. Let's go back to the minimum insurance coverage. Let's say that other guy only has $20,000 of coverage. The next place we're going to look is the underinsured motorist coverage of the person you borrowed the vehicle from.
Totally different note here. Let's say I'm in a car, I get in a crash. Where do I find a personal injury attorney in the state of Iowa?
Well, there are lots of ways to find a personal injury lawyer. In my opinion, the best way is to talk to somebody or a bunch of somebodies who have been through it and find out what their experiences were like, what they liked, what they didn't like, and start there and go online and type in if you're looking, for example, for a car crash lawyer. There you go. That's your Google search. Right. Motorcycle crash lawyer, whatever the case might be. But just because you find somebody that advertises under that banner doesn't mean that you got the right person. You need to go a little deeper. Talk to some people, find out what that person's reputation actually is. And really, one of the best sources of information, in my opinion, is if you happen to know a lawyer who doesn't do what you need. For example, you've been in a crash on your motorcycle and you want somebody to represent you. You got a family lawyer that does title opinions and writes wills. That might be a pretty good person to ask because they're not going to take your case. They don't do personal injury work, wouldn't know what to do if they did, but they may well know by reputation who some good selections are.
Right, and they're not going to gain financially from referring to another lawyer because that isn't part of the deal, from what I understand.
Correct.
Which means that anybody they're recommending because that's who they think would be a decent attorney for you. There's no bias at play, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
In a world that's gone very digital, we don't have necessarily as heavy a geographic boundary to finding an attorney as we used to. Back in the day, I think you found an attorney predominantly that was closer to where you lived because you wanted to be able to go into the office, have your consultation, and be able to go back to the office to drop off materials, talk to the lawyer. In this scenario, it's digital now. You can find somebody, you can talk to them via Zoom, you can talk to them any number of ways. You can do consults over Zoom, depositions even at this point. So is it critical to have an attorney that lives in the same city as you or works in the same city as you? Or is it okay to have an attorney that works in a city that's a couple hours away even?
I don't think geographic considerations are a significant thing that you need to be worried about in picking a lawyer at all for a lot of the reasons that you've said. But I mean, I'll just use myself as an example. I mean, I literally practice all over the Midwest.
Sure.
So it doesn't even have to be an hour or two. It can be further. It's just a question of if you can work out ways to make it work, which are not difficult at all these days. You very well could have a lawyer that's 5 hours away and you'll never know it until it comes time for trial.
That makes sense. Now, what is it, in your opinion, that motorcycle lawyers, car accident lawyers, personal injury lawyers do? I know it's a broad question.
Well, that is a really broad question, but let's just say, because you gave a bunch of different examples, lawyers that represent people that get hurt in crashes on roadways. What they do is they help those people. There are two pieces to every case of these types. One is liability or fault, and the other one is damages. And you hire a lawyer to help you develop those things because most people, hopefully it's the first time they've ever dealt with such a thing. They're going to be dealing with an insurance adjuster who does it every day, all day long. And unless you get a lawyer involved on your behalf, you're going to be working at a huge disadvantage. But your lawyer is going to be able to develop all the information you need to make the best case possible that the other guy's at fault and to prove exactly what your damages are. Because and both of those aren't the kinds of things that you just do for the first time and do it yourself and do an effective job. It's something that you want somebody that's experienced, that knows what they're doing, how to develop those things, and how to do it right.
And if you're feeling lost about who to hire, comment below and we'll get you the help you need. Let's say I have a case, it's ongoing, but the bills are too much and I can't wait. Like I'm thinking about filing for bankruptcy. Do I need to let my attorney know in a personal injury case?
Hell yes. Okay. I mean, I've had this happen actually where people file bankruptcy without talking to me and things all of a sudden get real complicated. And basically what happens if somebody that I represent in an injury case files bankruptcy, they just lost control of their case. Now the trustee in bankruptcy is the one that's going to be calling the shots, and it just makes things really complicated. So you need to talk to your injury lawyer before you go out and file bankruptcy. I'm not against people consulting with a bankruptcy lawyer. Matter of fact, I might have them point them to a bankruptcy lawyer. But the bottom line is, you only do it if you really, really have to. And there are other options. I mean, I'm not a fan of what we call lawsuit loans, but if you're going to file bankruptcy because you got people barking on you over medical bills and you're close to losing your house that you have a bunch of equity in, or a vehicle, or whatever the case might be, lawsuit loans may be and probably are a better fix for those things than filing bankruptcy. I mean, the lawsuit loan there's steep rates, but you file bankruptcy and that's going to follow you around for years. And you may not get the kind of relief you're looking for, or at least you'll get relief, but you might have been able to get that just by taking out a lawsuit loan.
Let's shift tracks a little bit here. What happens if you don't show up for jury duty?
If you don't show up for jury duty, you may be hauled in before a judge and have to explain why you shouldn't be held in contempt of court. I mean, they can come down on you like a ton of bricks if they want to. And if you've got a situation where a lot of people don't show up, they're probably going to have the sheriff go out and round those people up and bring them in, and you're going to be dealing with a pissed off judge when you get there, which if you've never been in front of a pissed off judge, it is not something you want to do.
No, it's very much not. And to clarify for the viewers at home, what does contempt of court entail?
Well, contempt of court means that you were supposed to do something according to the court system. You failed to do it. And now a judge is going to decide what your punishment should be for defying what the court said you had to do. I mean, this isn't optional. If the court tells you got to show up, you better show up.
Gotcha. All right, switching tracks again here for another question. In this hypothetical, the viewer has been with the insurance company for years, and they're just sitting there and they're wondering, shouldn't I just trust them to do right by me?
Let's just say that I'm real slow to say anybody should trust any insurance company, but there are some different things to look at there. For example, if you've been in a crash and it's your fault. Yeah, the trust of your insurance company can be higher than in other situations because your interests and your insurance company interests are pretty much the same as long as you've got plenty of coverage for the damages that were caused by the crash. The place where things start to get thorny, for example, is let's say that you're not at fault, someone else is at fault, and they don't have enough insurance to cover your losses. Let's go back to the $20,000 of coverage scenario that we talk about so often.
Sure.
The other guy has $20,000 of coverage, but you've got a case that's worth, let's say, $300,000 to get you paid for all your losses. That other guy's insurance company is going to cough up that $20,000 in a heartbeat. And now you're looking at your underinsured motorist coverage against your own insurance company. So however much you might trust them, if you're the one getting sued, now you're suing them. And no, it's not time to trust that insurance company because now your interests are exactly the opposite of theirs. They just became your adversary. And if you haven't lawyered up by now, you better, because again, you're going to be dealing at a disadvantage with an insurance company that does this all day, every day.
So there's a certain amount of leeway and trust when your financial interests align. And if it's not going to align, if you're going to go up against them in an adversarial scenario like underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage, don't trust.
That's the rule of thumb. If your financial interests are the same as the insurance company, they're going to be working for you because they're working for themselves, whereas other situations, it's just the opposite.
Fair enough. Thank you for joining us today. If you're in a crash in the Midwest, give the Biker Lawyers a call for your free consultation. And until next time, speak truth to power. Brought to you by the Biker Lawyers. Injured? Ride with us.